Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are going to discuss a new unit, and of course, as usual, we have two skills. Skill number 3 is discussing regulations and standards. Skill number 4 is working with written instructions and notices. Number 3, discussing regulations and standards. Regulations means rules. قوانين, قواعد, تشريعات. Regulations are the rules of a known regime that are to be followed. القوانين والتعليمات اللي احنا لازم نتبعها. This skill is simple. All we're going to do is learn some synonyms of terms describing regulations. كل اللي احنا هنعمله في المهارة دي ان احنا هنعرف مترادفات للكلمات اللي احنا بنستخدمها علشان نوصف القوانين. بسيطة المهارة دي. Okay, so let's start. I said to myself that it's going to be a bit easy, I think, if we started with a story. If we collected all the terms that we have to know in a single story. So, terms to describe regulations. As you can see, there are 3 words that have the same color. This means that all of them are the same meaning. And this is a true story, by the way. So it says, King James VI of Scotland, who in 1603 became James I of England, stipulated some regulations that prohibited the practice of witchcraft. من الجملة كده لما نيجي نقرأ ونقول إن أوكي كينج جيمس الملك جيمس السادس في اسكتلندا اللي في سنة 1603 بقى جيمس I في إنجلترا حط قوانين. من الجملة كده نفهم معناها حط قوانين اللي بتمنع ممارسة السحر. So stipulated means what? Put. This is the meaning of stipulated. Stated. نص قوانين. نص على قوانين. Some regulations that prohibited, of course you know the meaning of prohibited, يمنع, the practice of witchcraft. These legislations became compulsory to every citizen. Legislations نفس المعنى للregulations برضه قوانين. Became compulsory to every citizen. It means that every citizen has to do as these regulations say. So what does it mean? It means obligatory. إلزامي. If people complied with these legal requirements, they were to be spared. Spared يعني يسيبون في حالهم كده. يبقى لو الناس complied with these legal requirements, again the same meaning of regulations, are to be spared or were to be spared. يبقى comply with means confirm to, adhere to, امتثال إلى. يبقى لو الناس امتثلت للقوانين دي هيتم تركهم في حالهم. They were to be spared. However, since lots of people love to contravene regulations, many were executed. Again, from the meaning of the whole sentence, we can see that contravene regulations means breaking the law. ومع ذلك بما ان في ناس كتيرة بتحب انها تخرق القوانين وتخالف التشريعات, many were executed. كتير اتقتلوا. With King James VI around, no such thing as witchcraft was permitted. طول ما كان كينج جيمس ده موجود السحر ما كانش مسموح بيه. دي قصة حقيقية, ده في التاريخ فعلا. كينج جيمس ده ما كانش بيحب السحر خالص. So I hope it's a bit clear of the meanings that we are going to talk about. Okay, these are all the synonyms that we use to describe regulations. They are easy. They all mean the same thing. كل الكلمات اللي قدامنا دي بتعني نفس الحاجة. اللي بكل لون بتعني نفس الحاجة. ولكن في كل مجال بيتم استخدام اللغة بطريقة مختلفة. في القانون مثلا، في الترجمة في القانونية غير الترجمة الطبية غير الترجمة الهندسية، كل ترجمة أو كل لغة عموما في أي مجال بيختلف. علشان كده عشان الواحد يبان فورمال أكتر فبنستخدم كلمات مترادفات مختلفة. فمثلا بدل ما نقول laws that the law of this company is for you to come at 8 sharp، انت تيجي 8 بالظبط، القانون بتاع الشركة. You don't have to say law, you can say regulation, you can say anything of these kinds. Okay, all of these words have the same meaning. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words that mean rules, that mean laws. Legislation, laws, regulations, legal requirements and personal obligations. كلهم نفس المعنى، ولكن انا بس حبيت اوضح ان في اختلاف بسيط، ولكن في اي جملة ممكن نستخدمهم عادي مكان بعض. Okay, let's start with the first one. Legislation are these laws that are still proposed, like in the parliament. Before a law is to be enacted or is to be performed and formally accepted, you have to propose it. في البرلمان قبل ما بنعمل قانون بيتم الأول عرضه وبعدين نشوف القانون ده هيتم موافق عليه ولا لأ. This is the first stage. We call it legislation. القانون هو في المرحلة دي اسمه كده legislation. Okay, so this is loading. The rule is still loading. Number 2, laws. What is the law? So okay, now the rule, the legislation is accepted. So what is the law now? Okay, يبقى الأول كان proposal، القانون كان بيتم عرضه، اتعرض بقى قانون. ايه هو القانون بقى؟ القانون ده بينص على ايه؟ بينص على كذا. Number 3, regulations. How is this law to be performed؟ ازاي بقى القانون ده هيتم ممارسته، هيتم مراقبته ازاي؟ How is it going to be supervised? How the government is going to supervise this law. This is regulations. Regulations is the force of law. قوة القانون. القانون اتحط، الregulation بقى التنفيذ، عشان كده اسمها تشريع. regulations معناها تشريعات. Okay, when these regulations, when the citizen knows how the law is to be performed and followed, it becomes legal requirement, which means a must. It is a must for you to follow it because it has been proposed and accepted, legislation. It had been written. What is the law? It had been explained and understood and known how to be performed. This is how, regulations. So now it is a must for everyone to follow it. This is legal requirement. Okay, when it is a must for you to follow it, it's going to be a personal code. حاجة خاصة بيك. Even if the others do not follow it, you still follow it. هتاخدها كأنها حاجة مسلم بيها، إن خلاص ده قانون أنا مش هعمله، مش هعمل ضده. So it becomes personal obligations. Personal obligation means that you are the one responsible for performing the law. No one else can perform the law but you. Personal obligation. بقى obliged، بقى انت بقيت مجبور ان انت تنفذ القانون. A personal code. Okay, so this is the meaning of legislation, laws, regulations, legal requirements and personal obligations. But again, as I told you, you can use them interchangeably. I'm just showing you the slight difference between them. Okay, now move to number 2. We have forbidden, illegal, prohibited and banned. Again, all of them means the same thing, and you can use them interchangeably, but there are slight differences between them. If an act is forbidden, ممنوع, it may be illegal, ممكن يكون غير قانوني, or just is prohibited for safety precautions, أو ممكن يكون ممنوع علشان إجراءات احترازية, and so it is banned, وعلشان كده تاني نفس الكلمة ممنوع. So all of them means the same thing. In Arabic they mean the same thing, but in English they have slight differences. Then we have stated and stipulated. Again, they mean the same thing. Okay, then why do we use two different words? مادام هما ليهم نفس المعنى, ليه جايبين كلمات كتير؟ علشان again to sound more formal, نعرف تبقى لغة راقية شوية, تبقى لغة رسمية أكتر. فبدل ما نقول stated, the law stated, we can say the regulation stipulated. حاجة معقدة كده. So stated means stipulated, ينص على, this is the meaning of it. Then we have obligatory and compulsory. It means إلزامي, you have to do it, this is the meaning. Then we have adhere to, conform to, and comply with. Adhere to. This is the law you have to adhere to, otherwise you are to be punished. Then adhere to means يمتثل إلى, the same as. Conform to, the same as comply with. Now next last, break the law, breach regulations, contravene regulations. They mean the same thing, break the law, خرق ومخالفة التشريعات. But again, different synonyms, different expressions we use to express this meaning. بدل ما نستخدم جملة واحدة أو تعبير واحد علشان نعبر عن خرق للتشريعات, break the law, we can say breach regulations, we can say contravene regulations. And the last thing is allowed, authorized, permitted. Again, allowed مسموح, authorized مسموح, permitted مسموح. So this skill just talks about the synonyms of the expressions we use to describe regulations. مجرد مترادفات بس كده, نحفظ الكلمات ان دي بتساوي دي بتساوي دي, وان دي formal اكتر. Okay, now let's move to the book. Okay, number 8. In pairs discuss what is meant by regulations and standards. For example, safety regulations and design standards. Give some examples of organizations and departments in your country and international bodies that produce these kinds of rules. Okay, so what is meant by regulations and standards? Regulations القوانين والتشريعات, standards المعايير. Like safety regulations. Regulations are the rules of a known regime that are to be followed, and those who do not follow them are to be either fined or given a prison sentence. التشريعات هي القواعد اللي نظام معين بيحطها ولازم نتبعها. اللي ما يتبعهاش يا إما يتم تغريمه أو يتحكم عليه بالسجن. Okay, when are the people to be fined and when are they to be given a prison sentence? Sentence هنا يعني حكم مش جملة. Okay, for example, the safety regulations. These days, with the coronavirus, companies and institutions put rules for safety. If broken, the one responsible is to be fined. في أيام الكورونا دي الشركات والمنظمات بتعمل قواعد علشان الاحترازات. لو حد كسر الاحترازات دي وتخطاها بيتم تغريمه. So this is safety regulation. Okay, what about design standards? Now this is the case when a person is to be given a prison sentence. Like for example, in a project. If a project is said to be done in a specific way, using specific material, and the company didn't do this, then the one responsible is to be punished. لو في مشروع الشركة قالت احنا هنستخدم المواد الفلانية وهيتعمل بالطريقة الفلانية، بعدين حصلت تشيك اب وطلع ان لأ ما تمش استخدام المواد المتفق عليها بل مواد أردأ وأقل جودة، ساعتها الشخص المسؤول هيتم حبسه. So these are the design standards. If you did not follow the design standards, you might be given a prison sentence. So these are the regulations and the standards. And of course the organizations and departments that give these kinds of regulations are the government, the parliament, and even the company itself. Some companies put some regulations for their employees to follow. Okay, number 9A. Offshore oil platforms are covered by extensive safety regulations and design standards. In pairs, discuss the main hazards that oil platforms workers face and suggests some safety precautions that need to be taken. Offshore oil platforms دي منصة النفط البحري، بتبقى موجودة في البحر أو في المحيط أو في أي مكان، متوصلة كده لتحت في الأرض خالص علشان تطلع البترول والغاز الطبيعي من قاع البحر. It is a large structure with facilities for drilling and exploring, and to also get some natural gas that lies in rock formations beneath the seabed. This exercise I would not do. This is the one required from you. This is your assignment. هتقولولي يبقى احنا كده عرفنا ان هي منصة النفط البحري تبقى موجودة في عرض البحر علشان تستخرج البترول. ايه هي الهازاردز المخاطر؟ ايه هي الاخطار dangers and risks that the employers may face, and how can we solve them? This is what I want. Okay, I'm going, for example, I'm going to say one answer. We can say risk of explosion. ممكن يحصل انفجار ولا حاجة. So what is the precautions that we should do؟ ايه هي الاحتياطات اللي احنا لازم نعملها عشان الانفجار ما يحصلش؟ No smoke، محدش يدخن. We have to train how to use the firefighting equipment. نتدرب على اننا ازاي نستخدم الادوات اللي احنا بنستخدمها في مقاومة الحريق. And so on. This is what I want. I want you to tell me what are the risks, the hazards that may be faced in offshore oil platforms, and how can we get rid of them. Okay, number B is not with us. 9C. Complete the following extract from Isabel's talk by underlining the correct words. ده احنا خدنا الكلمات دي، وتاني هقول لكم مجرد بس ان احنا نعرف الكلمات في المهارة دي، مفيش اي حاجة فيها. هنقرأ وهنختار الكلمة اللي بالمعنى الصحيح اللي ماشي مع السياق. The focus of the course will be on your personal obligations in terms of looking after your own safety and the safety of others. ده تقريبا كورس تدريب للموظفين علشان يعرفوهم بالقوانين والتشريعات اللي المفروض يتبعوها في الشركة وهكذا. legislation طبعا قوانين فمش هتنفع. But the course will be in your personal obligations زي اللي احنا خدناها personal obligations in terms of looking after your own safety. Okay. For instance, we will be looking at personal protective equipment that's compulsory or prohibited. What is it? Of course he said personal protective equipment. يبقى هي معدات للحماية، فأكيد مش هتبقى prohibited، هتبقى compulsory. Okay, or activities that are compulsory or prohibited in certain areas such as smoking. تدخين هتبقى compulsory إلزامية? No, it's going to be prohibited. The majority of the obligations we will deal with are legal requirements or permits. It is of course requirements because we took it legal requirements. In other words, they are permitted or stipulated by law as part of health and safety. They are stipulated by law. So this is an expression. Stipulated by law يعني منصوص عليه من القانون. القانون ينص عليه. Stipulated by law. Legal requirements, of course. We will deal with our legal requirements like we did. Like we said in these slides. In other words, they are stipulated by law as part of health and safety. Safety what? Safety legislation. تمام. قال قبلها stipulated by law يعني النص عليه من القانون. القانون نص عليه. As part of health and safety legislation كجزء من قوانين وتشريعات الصحة والأمان. So we cannot say obligation لأنه هينص على law اللي هو legislation. Okay, if you these kinds of regulations, it's not the same as turning up for work late. لو انتوا أو لو انت عملت كذا مع القوانين دي مش هيبقى نفس الحال لو انت اتأخرت على الشغل. اوكي نكمل. Or merely breaching your contract of employment in some way. أو مجرد خرق العقد بتاعك بتاع التوظيف بتاعك في أي مشكلة بأي شكل يبقى breaching معناها ايه؟ خرق. So number 7 is going to be contravene. If you contravene these kinds of regulations لو انت خرقت التشريعات دي it's not the same as turning up for work late. مش هيبقى حاجة عادية زي ان انت تيجي على الشغل متأخر. Or merely breaching your contract of employment in some way. If someone fails to okay someone fails to هتبقى contravene لو حد فشل في خرق of course not. So it's going to be if someone fails to comply with health and safety risks they are breaking the law. So again, if someone fails to comply with health and safety, oh, so this is regs, sorry. Regs is short for regulations. So if someone fails to comply with health and safety regs, they are breaking the law. It's as simple as that. I'm sure you're all be aware of that, but it is an important point to emphasize. انا من كتر ما الحاجه مجرد تعريفات انا حاسه ان في حاجه غلط بجد يعني فيا ريت تكونوا بقى مصحصحين كده مجرد احنا بس هنعرف المفردات بتاعت كل حاجه. And here it is number D. Okay, so complete the following groups of synonyms مرادفات using the words in bold in exercise 9C. هنشوف كل واحدة من دول ايه المرادف بتاعها. Okay, number 1 illegal, banned, forbidden. As we said on the slides, it is prohibited. Allowed, authorized. It is permitted, مسموح. Adhere to, conform to, comply with. Comply with يعني يلتزم بيه اللي هي يمتثل ليه. Comply with. Number 4 stated, stipulated. Break the law, breach regulations, or contravene regulations. Number 6 laws, regulations, legislation, requirements, obligations. because it is going to be legal requirements and personal obligations. Number 7. Obligatory is compulsory. يعني إلزامي. So these are the synonyms, just like it was in the slides. Okay, now 10A. Read the extract from a guide to safety in an offshore oil industry. Complete the text using the words you wrote in exercise 9D. The helicopter flights that ferry personnel to and from the platform are subject to specific safety legislation. Ferry means transfer. Transfer بتنقل. Personnel الناس اللي بيشتغلوا الطاقم. To and from platform and are subject to specific safety legislation. قوانين. The procedures and standards that are blank by these regulations relate principally to the following areas. يبقى على طول أول ما نلاقي حاجة blank by the regulations يعني ينص عليها القانون، منصوص عليها من قبل القانون، تبقى stipulated. That are stipulated by the regulations relate principally to the following areas. Helicopter sea crash evacuation training. لو حصل crash الهليكوبتر evacuation يعني ان احنا نخلي المكان من الناس اللي فيه. تدريب عن الكلام ده. Courses are blank for all personnel. Courses are compulsory إجبارية لكل الموظفين. Design and safe operation of oil platform helidecks. The helideck is the symbol. You know in GTA في لعبة جاتا اللي احنا بنسميها بالعربي جاتا دي بيبقى فيه الهليكوبتر لما بتيجي تنزل بيبقى مكتوب دايرة كده وفيها H. This is the helideck. The place where the helicopter lands. ده المكان اللي الهليكوبتر بتقف فيه. عشان كده السيمبل اسمه H. As a symbol or as a shortage, just a symbol for helidecks. The place where helicopters land. Specialized pilot training. For North Sea oil platforms that fall within UK blank. So what is this going to be? هنا قال إن اللي بتقع منصات البترول اللي بتقع في المنطقة اللي تبع اليو كي يبقى هتبقى القوانين المنطقة اللي follow the rules and the legislation of the UK. This is the meaning of it. اللي بيتبعوا القوانين اللي محطوطة من الولايات المتحدة. So it is going to be UK legislation. Operations must في مكانين وهي حاجتين تعبير واحد بس اللي احنا خدناه بكلمتين comply with. Operations must comply with which means تلتزم بيه the legal requirements. It is the same expression, legal requirements of British health and safety regulations and civil aviation authority rules. They must also satisfy the additional specific blank laid down by the UK Health and Safety Executive and the Offshore Industry Advisory Committee Helicopter Liaison Group. هي كلمة واحدة اللي فاضلة obligations. They must also satisfy the additional specific obligations. لازم برضو يمتثلوا ليه. satisfy معناها يرضي ولكن هنا مش معناها كده، معناها ان هم يتبعوها برضو. obligations الحاجات اللي لازم يتبعوها اللي معمولة من منظمة الأمم المتحدة للصحة والأمن والأوفشور Industry Advisory Committee مجلس الصناعة البحرية، المنصات البحرية الصناعية. and helicopter leasing group. This is the name of it. So that's it. This is the section. It's very small because this skill is too small. You just have to know that all these words mean the same thing. They are synonyms. عشان كده السكشن ده صغير لأنهم عبارة عن مجرد مترادفات في بعضها. Okay, so that's going to be it, and don't forget to solve this one. 9A. Tell me what are the possible risks for offshore oil platforms, and how can we solve these risks and overcome it. This is what I want. Thank you, and bye till the next skill.